and have talks with eminent people from the corporate sector, from the social sector, and otherwise. Today we have with us Prakash Ramachandran, who is the CTO of Byjus, India's and probably, as they say, world's biggest or largest learning company or e-learning company.
Yeah.
We are delighted to have him with us at the Aswani School, and we have a lot of questions to ask him. And I also have here with me Chaitanya Modgil of grade 12 of Aswani School, and he too has a lot of questions from the students' perspective on careers in technology, etc. So let's start. Uh, just as a primer, Prakash, I believe you are pretty busy nowadays with the IPL star, going on, and Byju being a primary sponsor, etc. So how is it
Yeah.
going on that side?
Yeah. Pretty busy time in the sense that there are a lot of things to do. Usually we see a huge, influx of traffic when that happens. So part of it is looking
Right.
at that, ensuring that users have a good experience. So pretty busy week.
Right, right. As did the lockdown and the COVID time, when I'm sure you had a
Yeah.
tremendous spike of users then, and a lot
Yeah.
of challenging time for the technology guys, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Right,
when the whole COVID thing started back in March, almost everybody was clueless, right? Like what is happening. And
right,
when you look at it now, it's amazing what people have done. And not just the education industry, schools, every other industry, where it almost looked impossible, right? If you ask somebody 10 months ago that, hey, completely working from home, students not coming to school, but still learning, does it work? The answer would have been like, what are you talking about, right? And I think for us also, it was the same. We saw a sudden influx of students, and the other challenging thing over there was about the timing, right? Students were ready for taking exams, and suddenly this happens.
right.
Schools, nobody was clear what is going to happen. Is it just shut down for 14 days or is it more? So there were a lot of challenges coming in at that time. Like, how do we actually, modify or adapt ourselves to that situation?
Right,
So yes, it
right,
was quite challenging.
right. Nice. So let's start from the beginning. You are from a tier two city like Kochi. So tell us
Yeah,
about your journey all the way from Kochi, Vidyalaya, all the way
yeah,
through CTAC and supercomputers to being a CTO at Byjus. So how has the
yeah,
journey been?
yeah. So I was born and brought up in Cochin. Like first 18, 19 years of my, like almost 21 years, I was in Cochin. I did my schooling basically in Cochin itself. I was in KV, uh, and after that, I was not sure what to do. To be frank, right? I think a lot of students are also in that particular thing. Like, what should I do? Should I do X, Y, Z? Uh, and then there were a few things that interested me, and computers was one of them. I liked physics, so I was not sure whether I should study physics or computers. But I said, okay, let me like write the engineering exam. Got through in a college called Model, and I think Jay Suraj and me were classmates at that time. Pretty interesting college life. That
Right, right,
Model, yeah. And the fact that the model was like the whole college was around 480 students actually helped a lot for us, in the sense that the teachers were much more accessible than in a larger engineering college. It was more agile, right? Like syllabus was more
right,
agile. We could adapt to that students syllabus much more than any other colleges could have. That
right,
helped a lot. After passing out from college, I joined a company which was into ERP domain. But I wanted to work on certain things more closer to technology. That was more of finance, programming itself, but more finance related. And operating systems, networks was my passion. So I decided that I'll join CDAC. And part of the thing was motivated because CDAC was a government organization, Premier Research Institute, so doing something which actually helps kind of build certain things for the nation also actually was part of the thing that inspired me to join there. That time, CDAC was developing supercomputers simply because India couldn't buy supercomputers, partly because there was some moratorium on India buying those due to Pokhran test, etc. And we had to build a lot of things on our own over, in the sense that it had to be something which is available off the shelf. Uh, I worked there, working in certain operating system networking area, and then I joined Hewlett Packard. Again, same, worked on certain operating system, and then I joined a company. I think one of our classmates from model. If you know Shan, he was actually doing the support soft. I joined there, and then in 2009 I joined Zynga. Zynga was into this gaming. If you know Farmville, Cafe World, etc.
Right.
Farmville was something that was getting launched at that time. Was It was clear that it was becoming huge, and I
Right.
joined the infrastructure team. How do we actually help the game scale? Right, you are looking at 10 million users coming in a day. How do we actually grow our infrastructure to do that?
Right.
In 2014, I joined Hortonworks, working for some big data systems. And then 2015, there was a good opportunity. Somebody I knew proposed me saying that, hey, there is this company which is starting to do educational technology, and I joined Byjus. Byjus was at that point more of a physical classroom. We had certain software products, but it was more of a physical classroom services model. And the whole idea
Right.
was that let's take it to online, pure product software model.
Right.
And it has been a 5 year journey. A lot of
Right.
changes
Yeah.
happened over there.
I guess in the
And of
last
course,
5 years, Byjus has grown like multiple fold. I don't know. It's much more than multiple folds.
yeah,
Anyways, so my next question to you is, in a post-COVID world, when all this ends, when the pandemic finally leaves us, how are schools going to change according to you from an e-learning company point of view? How do you think schools will change? And
yeah,
even schools have adapted a lot, as you said, and
yeah,
adopting their tools and technology. So, what new models can develop from a schooling point
yeah.
of view, from a learning point of view?
Yeah, I think when you look at schools, right, the schools were already doing some of those changes. What changed in a major way is that it just got accelerated, right? Whatever, like earlier, we would say that in 2 3 years we want to incorporate certain models.
Right,
Let's say either using technology to drive classes. I think a lot of that got accelerated. In the COVID situation, I think one of the aspects of it is a lot of focus has been on purely doing remote delivery of the classes. But
right,
I think it has actually given a lot of people a chance to rethink, like, what can we do more? The question we are having now is, how do we actually incorporate technology? We are also
right,
exploring it out. There are a lot of companies who are doing it. One of the things we are trying to figure out is, how do we actually, there are certain things, think about, content development that we have, right? It's a very time consuming process. How do we
right,
actually share that with teachers? How do we share that with schools so that they can actually better use it?
right,
We are looking at certain things like, how do I use computer vision AI to do certain things better, right? How
right,
can we share that with schools? So
right,
definitely, I think there will be changes. Uh, what those changes are exactly, probably it's something where the schools have to actually work with others. Because
right,
certain things, like for example, the remote learning thing, I think you're working with one of the providers, probably Google or somebody.
right, right,
The same stuff can happen in other areas once people are back into classrooms.
right. It's more
There are a
kind of
bunch of things.
collaborative.
Yeah.
Right, right. Chaitanya, I guess you are waiting eagerly to
Yes,
ask something, so
yes,
please
sir.
go
Thank you, sir. So, my first question to you, sir, is that how do students who aspire for career in technology and especially in programming plan their careers?
Yeah. So when you look at technology, right, one of the things that has been happening is that there is a huge amount of change that is happening. Right? If you look at a lot of the job that exists today in technology, the technology didn't exist like 10 years ago. Right? So it's quite difficult for somebody to predict what is going to happen, what areas are going to come up. They just keep happening at a very good pace. So one of the primary things is uh, get the fundamentals right. Right? Uh, a lot of the things, even when you look at AI, like there is a lot of interest in AI now. But when you look at it, a lot of the skill sets required is actually high school math kind of things, right? So get the fundamentals right. The second aspect of it is how do I actually start developing strong learning skills? In the sense that I may know certain things, that is part of the knowledge. I know certain facts. How do I, uh, how do I actually apply those becomes pretty important. Like I may know a lot of things in science. If science, maths, engineering stuff is a lot of the backbone of technology, but I need to apply that also. Just having some certain facts or knowledge is not possible, right? And yeah, so part of the thing is trying to focus on the fundamentals. Start, developing a habit of learning things quickly, because things keep changing at a huge pace. So that's all I can say about this one. Programming specifically, if you ask me, I think there are few things, right? If you are specifically interested in programming, one of the aspects of it is just you have to do it. There is no easy way to actually learn programming. You can't read it from a book or listen to somebody and learn programming. You have to apply yourself over there. This is the same thing I was telling, right? Just knowing a certain language or certain things in information technology is not sufficient. You have to start applying. There are a lot of sites. We have acquired a company called White Hat Junior who try to introduce students to that, but there are other sites too, code.org, etc. The other part of it is try to do something small. Don't try to you can't expect somebody to become an expert in like 1 month. It takes years of small efforts to actually bubble up to become good in certain areas. It applies to programming too. uh,
Right.
This one thing. There are certain other skills also. When you look at technology and programming jobs, one of the most important one is collaborating with people, right? The things are so complex now that no one person can build it. Right? If you look at a rocket or if you look at making a computer, you have to interact with so many people. Communication skills are very important over there. How do you work with other people are very important. Trying to understand them. What is
Right.
the thing that they are going to say? Those skills are also very important in technology and other jobs. uh,
Right.
you don't, if you look at it, you don't have one Einstein. You have a, like, think about the whole you know there are a lot of research getting done in physics. It's actually done by a large team of people, not
Yeah.
by one person,
Right.
right?
Right.
So those skills are also very relevant over.
Right. Right. Very true.
And
I mean, what
another
happens
part of
is,
it, I
sorry,
look at
please
it
go.
programming as it so somebody can actually start to learn programming, not just to becoming a software programmer. Part of it is it's something like maths, where you are developing certain other problem solving skills, certain critical thinking skills too, when you are actually learning programming.
Right. Yeah, what you said is absolutely true. 100 years ago, there were the Einsteins and the Teslas of the world, amazing inventions by a single person, and you can hardly imagine that nowadays. One single
Yeah.
person making a breakthrough thing. It has to be a team of people collaborating over so many hours doing that. Right, very true. Um, Let me come back to the schooling world and the education sector. I have this question I have been thinking about a long time. Like uh, the companies like Amazon and Flipkart, yeah, they have taken over. They started small and their growth has been incremental. They're exponential in nature, rather. So many of the smaller retailers, the Kirana shops, the smaller formats have got tremendously affected by that. If we take the same equation into the education sector, companies like e-learning companies like Byjus and others have started small, and as you said, they still have a small percentage of the market share. What will happen in the future? Will they, kind of cause a lot of harm to schools around, or can that ever happen?
So when you look at Byjus, or for that matter, most of the edu tech or education e-learning companies, one of the aspects is they were not direct competitors to schools, right? In the sense
Right.
that it was always something which was a plus something to schools over there. And part of the reason has to do with, I think, what is the value that each one of them provide, right? What e-learning, the value provides is students can actually learn things at their own, free time. But
Right.
there are a lot of other things when I look at it that schools do provide. A lot of non-tangible things are there that the schools provide. However, given that most of the education sector, what they are interested in is not replacing schools as such, because there are certain things that it's impossible to do with a app, right?
Right.
You can personalize stuff, but still the teacher, a teacher or a school, how they guide the students throughout their life is pretty important over there. So one of the aspects most of the companies are looking at is how to actually do a B2B2C model, because a lot of them are now actually doing a direct. When I say B2B2C, what it means is a business to
So,
business to a consumer, right? So
right.
instead of directly approaching a consumer, can we work with schools to actually improve the whole situation over? If
Right.
I believe that if we can do it well, it's actually beneficial to both the education system, schools, as well as the companies out over. Uh, yeah, so it all depends on what is the value proposition. I think the Kirana store model is slightly different when you compare to the education model, because part of the reason why do I buy on Amazon is simply that I have greater choices. I have a lower cost. But that's not
Right.
something that directly applies to education.
Right. Right. Very true. Chaitanya, you have
So,
some
sir,
questions on AI, I suppose. Yeah.
yes. So, sir, my next question to you is that can you decode all the hype around artificial intelligence for us?
Yeah. So let me give you a brief overview of AI, right? AI, most people believe that it just came out in the last 2, 3 years. That's not true. AI has been, in development from 1950s. In fact, one of the first major applications people were trying to solve is, can we automatically translate documents? US was interested because they were interested in translating a lot of Russian documents into English, which is hugely time consuming. The problem was that there are certain key pieces that was missing at that time, right? And this happened for a long time. AI kept improving, but it never entered the mainstream. And the whole that section of the time from 70s to almost 2000, it's known as the AI winter. AI winter in the sense that there was every now
Nothing.
and then somebody will say that, yeah, we have actually solved AI, but turns out that nope, we are not there yet. Right? What has changed in the past 10 years is majorly that the approach to AI has changed. Initially, people were trying to teach computers how to actually learn something. Now, the whole approach has changed, saying that, hey, we don't need to make computers learn, they can learn their own. That's what one part of the AI deals with. It's called machine learning. Right? There are multiple pieces. There are things like natural language processing, machine learning. One sub part of machine learning is deep learning. How do you do that? Machine learning is called deep learning. Now, there are a few other facts also that came into play. One is that with internet, you have tons and tons of data now, right? Which actually most of these models require. You can't teach a AI to recognize a cat by saying, "Hey, cat has got an eye. It looks like this," etc. You need a lot of data for that, and suddenly all this data was available. The third part of the AI is
Okay. I
uh,
guess, yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and there the computing power increased manifolds, right? I was telling about CDAC. At that time, we were looking at something about what we call as 1 teraflop of computation power. That means I can do 1 trillion operations in a second. Any operation, meaning let's say addition, multiplication kind of operation, I can do 1 trillion of them. What we have now is we have some of the larger machines doing somewhere around 1 peta. 1 peta is basically 1 followed by 15 zeros. right? That is the amount
Yeah,
of
I
jump.
mean,
It's impossible to actually do. So once you have all of these things coming in, there was a lot of improvement that happened in AI. Is it going to stay? Definitely, it's going to stay. But how it is done definitely will change. So, to give an example, right? 10 years ago, if I wanted to write some program to identify the picture of a cat, okay, if I show a picture of a cat, it should say cat. If I show a dog, it should say dog, right? It would have taken me a PhD, probably a computing power which I didn't have access to. However, now things have progressed. A lot of understanding has been made that I can do the same thing in literally 10 lines of code because there are a lot of tools available. And I can actually do it on my laptop. I don't need a huge machine for that.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So that is how the AI is changing so fast. There are
right,
few other advances that have happened which look out of sci-fi movie. There is something called GPT-3 if somebody is interested in, where what it has done is it has taken trillions of documents from the internet, fed it to this machine. It does a huge amount of computation, and now if I ask a question, it can answer that to me in what looks like almost a human kind of format. Sometimes it's quite difficult to distinguish between whether a human answered it or a machine answered it. So definitely AI is going to be there. It's evolving at a very high pace too. So
right,
it's going to be there. There are a huge number of areas in AI, and part of the thing is like how do we actually introduce new domains to?
right, right. I
Does
think
that answer your
Chaitanya had
question,
a
Chaitanya?
follow-up question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Chaitanya, I think
Yes,
you
sir.
had a
I had.
follow-up question to that too, regarding AI and jobs, etc.
Yeah,
Right? We were talking about it. Yeah.
yeah,
Do you
Yes,
want to
sir. I
ask that?
had that question as well. So, sir. Yes, sir. So, sir,
yeah.
that question was that we hear many doomsday predictions about how AI will gobble up most existing jobs. So, what is
Yeah,
your take on that? And how should we
yeah.
prepare for such a world?
So to be frank, I also asked that question myself, right? I don't have a clear-cut answer to be frank. But when you look at it, the concern that any new technology or machines will replace human jobs is not new. In fact, there are usually when you talk about these things, there is a story from history that comes in the sense that in somewhere around 200 years ago, 1815, I think, right? There were a lot of weavers in England, right? They were very skilled artisans, right?
Right,
What happened at that time was Britain started doing mechanization. Basically, they started using machines to actually produce the textiles. Right? What that meant was you could actually produce textiles at more efficient rate, at lower cost, and you didn't need that many skilled people over there. There was a organization called Luddites who actually revolted against it, and Britain had to actually go into some kind of quelling the rebellion mode. Now,
right,
this particular Luddite story comes a lot whenever we discuss new technologies which actually can replace machines. But then we look at it, the textile industry has gone manifold over there. The industrialization actually helped a lot of new jobs over there. So in the long run, when you look at it, it has been pretty positive, and that's true for multiple things, right? Same story happened. You had a lot of horse carts. There was a whole industry actually who was into rearing horses. Then comes cars and trains, or rather, trains came first and then cars. And people were worried, right? Hey, what do we do? There are like probably, you know, uh, 50, 60 million horses, and suddenly you are saying all those horses are not good enough. We lose our jobs. It has happened multiple times over there. So the question is not about there are job losses or not. It's about whether it's net positive for the society as a whole. And most of the cases, it has tended out. However, there are a few problems. One is that the pace of how the AI is actually doing things that worries a lot of people. Worries in the sense that hey, will 20 years from now a lot of jobs cease to exist. So it's about the change, and managing change is typically time consuming. It's very costly. And when you look back at the Luddites, right, that's what happened over there. They were very good at some particular skills. Except that the technology came in, the machines came in, there were a lot of new jobs created. The problem was that their skill set didn't match over there, right?
right.
Same story keeps happening. You had CNC machines, which meant that when you look at it, when CNC machines are machines which can automatically do certain factory jobs, right? Cutting and all. The people who worked over there, they had a certain skill set that got changed. So yeah, I don't know the future, but one of the things is just imagine like if somebody can actually adapt to the new situation much better. If the Luddites who were worried about their job losses, if they could adapt to that situation much better, it would have been a less painful one, right? So one of the things is, yes, the rate at which things are happening, you're no longer looking at a career which is going to span a 40 years, 50 years kind of thing. There is going to be changes coming in. A lot of the jobs which
Right.
are going to exist, let's say 10 years from now, have not been invented yet. Part of it is
Right.
trying to remain flexible so that I can adapt to it faster.
Right.
uh, yeah, I haven't really answered your question of whether there will be a lot of job losses, but I'm pretty optimistic, and I think this is one way you can prepare yourself. Anybody can prepare yourself for that.
Right. So, Prakash, coming back to schools and teaching, etc. Um, I just wanted to know, and a lot of our teachers have also this concern with all this that has happened. How will the role of a teacher change?
Yeah,
Will the teacher restrict herself or himself to just being a coach or a guide, rather than earlier times, teacher was everything. The teacher was providing you
yeah,
information, knowledge, testing you, at the same time being you as a being a coach, a guide, a philosopher, whatever you may. Now information is there everywhere, and there are
yeah,
so many tools available. So will a teacher change into someone being, a pointer? Okay, you go to this particular website, you will find a lot of answers to your question, or you watch so and so YouTube videos, and you know
yeah,
what you learned in class, you can learn better there. So will that
yeah,
happen to the teacher, or how will the role change?
yeah. So I would like to take a couple of parallels, right? It's something similar to the change thing that we were discussing. Like when internet, like when I think we came out of college, internet suddenly was a big thing. And at that
Right.
time, everybody used to think that, now all the information is available, right? Why do I
Right.
need anything? I'll just go to the internet, read up something, and I'll be enlightened for life, right? That didn't happen. And in fact, if you look at it, there are certain other things too. Like there are massively online classes. Some of them have been very successful too. Like for example, one of the examples is the AI. One of the major liberation movement for AI was there is somebody called Sebastian Thrun, who was the head of AI in Google. He released a online class which anybody could attend. Right? It definitely helped certain set of people. But it's not like that it has replaced the role of a university at that point. And for the schools also, it's the same thing. Now, but what we can tell is there are certain changes in roles that can actually come into play, right? One of the interesting ideas that has been brought up is, something called flipped classrooms or blended classrooms. The idea is that when you think normally about a teacher now, teacher is a primary instruction giver, like what you were telling, and does a lot of things. One of the ideas that people are trying it out is, can we actually flip the whole thing around? Instead of teacher providing just the instructions, uh, can the teacher provide certain materials or what to learn, etc.? The student does it at home, comes back, and the teacher's role is a facilitator over there, right? First part is a facilitator, and then try to guide the student, right? Ask him what did he understand. Okay.
Right.
Now, the role is not just about pointing it out. The role is to actively engage the student. It's the teacher's role is not done by saying that, hey, go over here, watch this YouTube, read this book, and
Right.
come. Then you're done. The teacher plays an active role. So, in some of the places where it has been actually tried out, it has actually worked out for the teachers too a little bit well. It has been a change. They took some time to adapt to it, but it has worked well in the sense that teachers now could focus on actually imparting practical application knowledge to the students. Yes, it is a bit difficult in the beginning, and that will be the case any which way. For the students, it means that they have to be more responsible. It teaches them some amount of responsibility over them. it instills some kind of career learning. Like when you're out of college, what do? There are new things coming up. You have to still learn at that particular point in time. Nobody is going to tell you go and learn this. You have to figure out what it is and then learn. Part of the teacher's responsibility is trying to make them understand that this is something you're doing for life, not just 12th standard exams or my engineering exams are done, let me burn all my books and go away. uh, yes, we don't know yet whether it is successful in larger scale. So one of the problems in education is that whenever you have some new ideas, it's often difficult to actually understand the efficacy and then small tweak it. It will take time, but it's worth trying if it actually makes the whole thing better for the students as well as the teachers. Now the same thing doesn't apply for, it depends on the age group. Like probably somebody in 11th 12th or degree, for them this particular thing works very well. Lower grades it may be different.
Mm-hmm.
There I
Right.
think there are, you cannot go through the same model, but there are other things that the teachers can add to their toolkit, right, as I call it. Like
Right.
whatever you do, your videos are just one toolkit. There are other toolkits which are available to the teachers.
Right.
Yes. Will it be a very successful change? I think it will take time, and it's a bit difficult in the beginning, but that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
much fine. The
Right.
teacher's role is to impart knowledge, not to just instruct over them. It's not done if I just write something on the board and do. It's not that. That's not what teachers do even today. So part of it is training them for the future, jobs, markets, etc. Instill them like, hey, how do you learn? And there, I think teachers do have a very huge role to play.
Right. Big. Yeah. So as you said, I think the teaching job is going to be there as long as humanity is there. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chetan.
So, sir, leaving AI apart, I want to ask another question to you, and that is pursuing CS branch in engineering apart from an IIT or any other prestigious institute worth it or not?
Yeah. So let me put it to you this way, right? Why do people actually like IIT? One is that it's supposed to be one of the premium learning institutes, and there is a definite brand associated with it, right? Somebody says I'm from IIT, you know that it's a very good certificate to say that you are at least this good, right? However, uh, when you look at the long term, right? What is important is the skill set that you have acquired, right? Not the certificates that you have acquired. Let's say, like I'm into like some good amount of years into my job. Nobody has asked me where did I actually graduate from. Part of the thing they are interested in is what is my skill set. I'm into programming, so what they are interested in is, hey, can he actually develop an app, right? Can he actually do his job on creating website, right? So yes, if you are interested in IIT, definitely go for it. Try out your best. But if you don't get into that, it's not the end of the world. There's a much more time ahead, where you can learn a lot of things. You can actually understand much better things. And even if you are into IIT, don't think that I just got into IIT, that is the end of the world. That's the other thing I've seen, at least in some people, right? Like when I interview certain people, they worked a lot out in till they got into IIT, and then they thought, okay, I'm done, right? I don't have to do anything. No, that doesn't work that way. What matters is what the skill set you have in the long run. And in fact, if you look at it, the thoughts have been changing. Like companies like Google, Facebook, etc. They used to recruit only from Ivy League schools. Ivy League schools are the top schools in US. However, what they found out when they did a lot of research on the data for their employees is, initially there is definitely a differentiator, but in the long run, it hardly matters how much skills you have picked up, how well you work with somebody in the organization. How do you actually apply yourself in the long run is way more important than any of the which degree you had. So some of them now don't even insist, for example, for a programming job, they don't even insist that you have a programming degree. Uh, but having it from a good school definitely helps out, because that says that, hey, this person has actually done a little bit of hard work and they have reached to this particular point. But yes, there are, in the long run, don't think of it as the aim is just to get into IIT. There are a lot of things out over.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Excellent answer, Prakash. I would again come back to the teaching and the parenting world. So, a lot of parents, we have been interacting with some of the parents, and we ourselves being
Yeah,
parents. Uh, this is the dilemma we have now. You know, earlier we just had schools, let's say 40, 50
yeah,
years ago, and the children just went to schools, and that was it. All the learning happened in schools, and apart from whatever happened in life. And then we had these tuition classes and coaching classes, to augment whatever you have were learning in schools. And then later on came internet with providing all kind of information. And now you have these e-learning apps. And with COVID and the lockdown, we also see the growth of homeschooling, where
yeah,
parents have to guide the students a lot because teachers are just not there. So now we have 4 or 5 dimensions from a parent point of view about guiding children, about teaching children. So how do they, you know, these dimensions, how do they, I mean, I don't know, for lack of right word, how do they align themselves towards these dimensions? How do they reduce the confusion?
yeah. I think the school part, I think you are much better positioned to answer. So let me pick up the
Right,
other pieces, right? The tuitions and the e-learning apps. So
right,
e-learning apps, if you look at it, there are two set of categories. One of them is trying to actually replace the tuition. The other one is giving an extra, like I'm repeating it again and again, that there is an extra toolkit that is available to the students for certain things they can do on their own, right? That's where they
right,
come into. Now, if you ask me about tuitions versus the e-learning apps, I think there are a lot of factors over there. So we are also trying to launch a tuition class now.
right,
More of like the reason why it came was definitely to put some form of discipline into kids. Yes, they can learn on their own, but not everybody is prepared for that. Some people do require some extra guidance when they are learning on their own. So that's why we were trying to do certain things in that way. Now, what I would suggest is definitely if you are looking at e-learning, just try them out. Most of them they have a free trial, etc. Like we do also have, but try them out. See how it's working for your for the student.
yeah,
How much is it helping him, and then make a call on it, right? And it depends on a bunch of factors which are quite personal to people. So let them try it out and then figure it out. I don't have a specific answer to that because I'm also a parent. I'm also going through some of these things. I have used certain things available to me for my son. And especially with what you said was true, the COVID stuff. Like I was going through some of the 12 standard max, right?
right,
Uh, right for the past 1 month. Like he'll come, hey, I learned this. I didn't fully understand this, so just guiding him on that. So try things out and see how much value it gives, and then make a decision over that.
right, right. Yes,
Yes, sir.
Chaitanya.
So, sir, I have heard that you worked with Param, India's supercomputer.
Yeah.
So, tell us about your experience.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, I joined there almost, just 1 year out of college. What I wanted to do was I just wanted to work in. There were a couple of things which were very interesting to me. In the sense that I knew some of the people who worked over there, and I looked up to them. Some of them were my seniors from my college. Some of them I met them through there, and these were like very amazing people, right? That was one part of the thing. The second part was it looked like a very challenging thing. Like you are trying to do some things which probably doesn't, you can't buy out of, just like you buy off the shelf now. And at that particular point of time, because India was denied, India couldn't buy any supercomputer, we were trying to develop one. And the whole approach was that, can we develop something with off the shelf components? Off the shelf in the sense, something I can buy directly without going through all the bureaucratic loops. So there are a set of applications, as it turns out, in scientific and engineering community where you can do divide and conquer. So the whole idea was that can I take normal machines and put, let's say, whatever, hundreds of them, and then the whole thing acts as one giant computer. And what divide and conquer typically means is, let's say, I want to add 10 numbers or million numbers, right? One option is that I can do it myself, or I can actually, give 10 of them to you to add, give 10 of them to Jay to add, and then take all the sums and then add them up. So there are a set of operations where, this is very much possible, where each person, the work he has to do is very less, but combinedly they can do a huge amount of work. And luckily, it happens that some of the applications we were looking at, like weather forecasting, that is possible. And weather forecasting, to give you an idea, is nothing but solving linear equations that you actually do, except that you only want to solve a billion of them, right, at a time. So initially, it was a bit difficult because you had to actually learn a lot of things on your own. Trial, do certain trials. Maybe you will fail, but fine, try the next thing. Yeah, fail, fine, try the third thing. So that was pretty much interesting to me. And the whole thing is that in the world of supercomputers, there is something called, the amount of computation is called uh, teraflops, or I can do trillion floating point. Like I was mentioning earlier, some of the things are like, things have moved a lot now, that you're looking at petabytes, or people are saying that in another 2 years we'll have exabytes. Exabytes is something like, 1 followed by 18 zeros. That many number of operations I can do, right? Can you just imagine what is 1 followed by 18 zeros? It's so difficult for us to do. So that's where the supercomputing world is going on now. So it was pretty exciting because there were a bunch of things I could learn from there, both personally, technically, etc. And it was very exciting time that, yeah, we are doing some things where, you're doing it where other people also can benefit over there.
Right. Right. I think one of the follow-up questions on supercomputing was, where does India really stand in the world arena
Yeah,
on supercomputers?
yeah.
Are
So
we all?
so there are various ways to look at it. One of the things is, how do you measure those things, right? Like I was telling about the, how many floating point operations, how many trillions or exa, whatever computation. There are a lot of applications which don't really belong over the now. So that is one aspect of it. Generally, when you ask where does somebody stand in the world of supercomputing, usually you look at a website called Top 500. Right? What Top 500 does is they rank the machines based on how much computing power they have. The bit of sad factor over there is, India has only two machines which are there in the top 500. Right?
Okay.
Uh, it's led by China. China has a lot of them now. The second is US, and I think Japan follows it. But India is there only in the, uh, only two out of that 500. And part of the reason is not just about supercomputing. It's got to do with what are the applications. One of the reasons China and US or Japan leads over there is they have a lot to do with fundamental research, right? Where do you use supercomputers? You use it in meteorology, you use it in physics, uh, and a lot of fields. India typically hasn't joined those fields yet. For example, the India is very relatively nascent to things like material research or fundamental physics stuff, or chemistry for that matter. I think that's where the demand for supercomputing is, and because since a lot of the things doesn't happen in India at that particular point, I think that is one of the reasons why India hasn't, grown in that supercomputing world. And now there are a lot of things happening in India, like the whole manufacturing sector, which will mean that you need more research in, material science. Hopefully, once those fields become start to grow, my guess is that supercomputing will also grow over there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but to give a short answer, yes, there are only two machines in India in the top 500, but that's not the only measure. There are other measures also that we can look at.
So, Prakash, I think we discussed a number of things. One final question I had is regarding Byjus, your company. So, I think I just read it this week or last week. I think the latest valuation of Byjus is $11 billion, and that's an
Right.
amazing number. And it has reached here at in a very short time, and it's one of the most valued unicorns that we have in India as of now. So, what's next for Byjus? Uh, is going global. The next thing is, or focusing on niche technologies like AI. The next thing. What do you think is the next frontier?
Yeah. So, comparing to the question you asked earlier about the supercomputers in India, this is something which is pretty interesting, right? That
Yeah.
uh, we are trying to become a very large player in education, which is not there in US or in even in China, right? There are certain models in China, but they work very differently over there. Now, with Byjus, yes, there are two things. If you look at the Indian e-learning market, the segment of the market covered is very, very, very small when you compare to the actual size of the market, right? Like how many students actually pass out of schools, right, every year, or how many people, students study in schools. Compared to that, none of the e-learning comes even closer, right? It's less than a
Yeah.
percent of that particular market. So definitely there is a lot of growth scope in India. We are looking at certain things where how do we actually make add more things to the learning skill set where students find it interesting, right? Students should find it engaging and interesting to learn. Part of the things we are doing for the lower age groups were, things like how do I combine some of the new technologies, AI, for example, specifically computer vision, to give new experiences to kids? Can we give something called experiential learning, where I can actually find ways to help students understand things out of the pure assessment kind of skill set, right? That is one part. The second part is, yes, there are definitely global aspirations. We acquired a company in US called Osmo that primarily deals with 6 to 8 year old students, non-curricular, but think of it as small uh, you know uh, toys given to kids through which they can learn. To give an example, it's something like, I have a worksheet, I can do certain things on my book. It uses computer vision to actually see what you're doing on the book and give suggestions over it, right? They have been pretty successful they are very popular in US. Certain things, what certain skill sets and technologies we got from them, we want to actually implement it back in India too.
Exactly.
They have been purely focusing on non-curricular things, so we want to combine that over there and see whether we can take certain things to global markets. But it does take some time, in the sense that whatever works in one particular country, sometimes if you just try to copy it in another country, it doesn't work very well, right? To give an example, you were talking about Amazon or Flipkart, there were a lot
Right.
of other companies who actually tried out the taking the Amazon model to India. The reason why they didn't succeed was certain market things in India they didn't understand it very well. People, like in US, everybody is accustomed to using a credit card, which is pretty much required to do online buying, right? India, they introduced small tweaks. When you look at it in the larger scheme of the things, it was a small tweak, cash on delivery. That suddenly took, Flipkart and Amazon up. So there are certain tweaks that will be required for each country. Um, if you look at the prioritization, we are looking at certain things like we are already present in the Middle East. We are looking at English speaking countries, right? Uh, so that's where it is now. So to answer your question, yes, I think India itself, there is a huge market, probably the biggest
Yeah.
market in the world, right?
Right.
And it's an aspirational thing for Indians.
Yeah.
Indians typically don't think of doing something for education of your kids as it's a cost. They think of it as an investment. So it's a huge market out
Absolutely.
here.
Right. Right. Amazing. I think it's been an amazing set of questions and answers from
Yeah,
you. Um,
yeah,
I think we have one question from the audience. Uh, where, the question is, how do you maintain work-life balance? And I think that
yeah,
question is very apt for you, being
yeah,
the CTO of a very valuable company. I'm sure you have asked that question yourself too.
yeah. So to frankly answer, right? It's kind of up and downs, to be frank. In the sense that there are times when you get into certain things where you miss out on work-life balance and do you know You go to the extreme, and then suddenly one day realize that, hey, I have to do this, right? To be frank, I don't think that I have done that all the time. Right? But part of the thing is trying to understand it, right? Hey, what am I actually doing wrong? Trying to figure out how do I actually do things better. Part of the thing is, you don't have to do everything yourself when you're working in an organization. Uh, when you ask industry guys, they'll call it delegation, right? Uh, for example, there are roles each people play. The whole idea is how do we actually combine as an organization do certain things. So part of the thing is, yeah, you have to figure out how to work with your team. What are the right things to do? Do I have to do it myself, or
Mm.
sometimes it becomes that, especially in the early times, you want to be so controlling at times. That is one of the reasons why the work-life balance goes for a toss, right? You feel that no, I have to do this. I can't actually ask somebody else to do it. So understanding that is, I think, one of the primary things that can happen. But yes, there are times when I it things will get very busy. There are times when things will be okay, that you have enough free time. Part of the thing I think is trying to focus on doing what I was saying earlier, as well as when you get time, enjoy it. Right? There are there are a lot of variables over there. Some variables are not under your control, but whichever ones are under your control, try to use them in a wise manner.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Right. Prakash being Prakash, I think he has answered that in a very technical way with variables and constants. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. Chaitanya, would you like to conclude?
Yes. So thank you so much, sir. It was an amazing
yeah,
session. We
yeah. Thank
learned
you.
many things which we didn't even knew earlier, and I hope our audience liked it too.
Yeah,
Stay safe
sure.
until we meet next.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
so
think
much,
I'll
sir.
take just a minute. I saw one more question on language
Yes.
curriculum. I'll just
I just
spend
saw
like
that.
a
Please.
couple of minutes because it's pretty
Please.
interesting. So we have been looking at it. One of the aspects of languages, it's pretty different from things like your math, science, or even social studies, right? Maths and science is a lot about facts, understanding things, and then applying them. Whereas language takes a very different aspect, especially given that in India we have several languages. However, going back to the AI question asked, there are a lot of advances that have actually happened in the past couple of years that it puts you in a totally different perspective on what all things you can do, right? Uh, like certain things, what we are looking at, for example, what do you want to do when you are actually looking at language learning? There are multiple aspects, right? Part of it is grammar. Part of it is literature aspects of it. But what we were looking at was literature aspect is very difficult to cover. Grammar is easy, but grammar alone won't do it. I can actually by heart the whole dictionary. I can know the grammar very well, but I cannot speak in good English till I actually try. Right? One of the ways is that I can actually learn is by doing things. So we were looking at three aspects of it. The primary aspect is, can I speak very well? Let's say I came from a second tier city, right? Till I was in like some sixth or seventh grade, I was very shy to speak in English because I was so afraid. Right? I don't know how to speak. Will I make some mistakes, etc. So part of it is, so we are approaching it more like, can I actually speak in a fluent way? Can I understand when somebody is speaking, right? And the third one is reading skills. So that is the skill set we are actually focusing on. Certain other things like literature, I think we are not there yet, where we can actually do it using technology. But these three aspects look to be very much in place. So we were trying out a bunch of things. We have certain things in beta. We were trying out with some of the kids over there. We are looking at speech to text. Speech to text means when I talk, can it actually translate into text, right? Text to speech, the reverse of it. Can I actually have a small conversation with you? Conversation with you in the sense you may be talking to a bot over there. How do I actually do that very well? So these are the set of skills: grammar, speaking, reading, listening, that we are trying to focus over. But it's a very different thing than what you technically do with the maths and science over there. So we want to take it slow. What is the final end user experience? How do we actually make it better for the kids? So that is something which takes time. So we have some things that we are trying it out constantly, like what works. And sometimes kids surprise you a lot. When you try it out, then you'll figure out, oh, I think I had thought about all this, but the kids surprise you a lot in how they actually do certain things. So that's what we are approaching.
Right.
Cool.
Great.
I think,
So
yeah,
I guess we come to
Thank
an
you once
end of
again, sir.
this. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you
yeah,
for joining us, taking
yeah,
out time
yeah,
and answering our questions. It's been wonderful to have you. Once again,
yeah,
thank you from the entire staff at Tasani School and all the
yeah,
students. Thank you so
yeah.
much.
Thanks again. Thanks, Chaitanya. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah,
Thanks, sir.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.